You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Knezick.
Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I'm Tom Knezick, and today we're buzzing into episode 79. And this is going to be another great podcast full of news articles about native plants, our highlights of the week. We got the salt contest.
We do have the salt contest. I have, you know what? I have another surprise phone call just for you.
Gosh.
No one's calling for me. They're all these phone calls are for you.
And, so there's a lot of great things lined up, and that is if I can keep it together, because I got my booster shot yesterday.
Are you
feeling out of it? But,
are you feeling out of it?
Oh yeah, but no, I'm keeping it together. I don't feel as bad as I did last time, which is good so far.
That's good.
But who knows?
It might go down. It might go downhill. You know, I know you knew this, but I had a sinus infection last week, and I didn't realize how out of it I felt until I went back and listened to the podcast afterwards. And I was like, oh, wow. I was like, I was hazy, but I was like, I'm going to be a trooper. I can pull through this. I'm not that bad. And then after I started went to the doctor and started taking medication, I was like, oh yeah, I was much worse than I thought. but
no, I figured it's 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. It takes like 2 weeks to kick in the full strength. So, there's people at risk. I have a grandmother who's 92. My parents are still over 65. So I think my mom's not over 65.
She's not there yet.
She's not over 65. My dad is over 65.
Actually, she's a few years away.
That's pretty close. but then like aunts and uncles, they're all
gotcha.
At that age where they say it's a little bit higher risk. So just want to make sure we're protecting everybody on my end.
Yes, I completely
agree. And then my son is the other reason.
That's
because he can't get any vaccine. So
that's huge.
But we actually did look at his with kids nowadays. My wife and I were talking about, and he's not even a year and a half yet. He's already got 18 different vaccinations. You know,
I just heard a news report coming into work the other day where they were saying that vaccination rates on children were way down, down 18%. Just overall vaccinations that people were, since COVID, doing less and less vaccinations, which really shocked me.
I think a lot of it is people didn't want to go to doctors or hospitals for a year. And there's another report that came out saying that a lot of these hospitals are overwhelmed, not just because of COVID patients, but people who didn't go to the doctor for a year and they had minor issues that now all of a sudden are really big issues, and they have heart problems or lung problems or cancer problems that they didn't get checked out because they're too scared to go to an emergency room or a doctor for all of 2020 and into 2021. And now they're showing up and it's too far gone and there's not much left that some of these hospitals can do.
Well, I know during COVID, I think we go to the same doctor. I'm not sure if you go to the same doctor.
No, I go to a different one.
All right. So, but they were doing Zoom appointments unless it was something you had to be seen for. Like they didn't want you to come in. So, but don't you need, I could be wrong. I don't want to get too sidetracked with that. This isn't the vaccination episode, but like if you have a child that's going to be school age, there's certain vaccinations you have to have for enrollment, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. There's ways to work around it.
Yeah.
At least that's what I learned on Law and Order SVU. So if you remember that episode, that was a crazy one. But so
awesome.
But we do, like I said, we have a great show lined up. I think we should err on the side of making it a little quicker. I know we say that every time, but I feel good now. So
let's kick into it then. So we always start off. I'm glad. I know we experimented with shuffling things around, but I'm glad we're back to our comfortable format.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start off with the plants that we're vibing with every week with That's Hot.
It's hot.
Would you like to go first? Or you want me to go first? All right, go for it.
So mine is Hamamelis virginiana, which is American witch hazel.
Yeah.
And this is one that gets confused a lot.
It does.
Because there's not there's non-native witch hazels.
Yes.
And they tend to bloom in the early, well, I guess it's still kind of winter, but early spring. So if January, February, March
I think
is kind of there.
I think the most common, it's Hamamelis X intermedia Arnold's Promise, which is that bright yellow, and there's a red one too. I can't remember what it's called, ruby something, but which are spring, early spring bloomers.
And I remember just from last February and March seeing a lot of people saying, "Oh, my witch hazel's blooming, my native witch hazel's blooming," and then people would have to type in, "Oh, it's probably not a native one if it's blooming now," because the native ones, at least what I've seen in our crop block here, are blooming now. At least just starting to.
Yeah.
And ours are pretty small, so it's you only get a handful on each. They're a foot and a half tall.
Yeah.
So you only get a handful of blooms on each plant, but it's starting to bloom now. So if you have a native witch hazel, well, you probably know that it's blooming now, or it's going to start blooming now. But it's a really, really interesting tree because there's not a lot of things that bloom this time of year. It has a really unique flower. It's kind of like spindly looking and very wiry, thread-like, I guess is a good way to put it. And but it's a large shrub, small tree, gets 20 to 30 feet tall.
Yeah.
If you let it grow in a tree form. Has really nice fall foliage with that yellow color. And what else do I have here? Oh, it's a facultative.
Awesome.
Which is so it's half wet, half dry. Is where you're going to find it. It's not always going to be in deep wells.
Now that you mention it, I'm going to get one for my property. Like I was just thinking about it, I'm like, oh, do we have any of those available? I think I want one for my house.
And it's an understory plant. So if you need something for a shadier spot in your yard, and you want something shrubby, this is a good fit for.
And it takes a while. Like it can get taller, but it for it to hit 20 to 30 foot, like you're probably not going to see it that height. Your son will.
Yeah, exactly.
So for my for my That's Hot this week, I went a little bit different. And I know a lot of times we're going, oh, right now the fall color is really good, or right now it's in bloom and it looks great. I went a little bit different. So my pick this week is Eupatorium Immaculatum, which is spotted Joe Pye. And what made me think of it was your family was kind enough. You have a house up in the Adirondacks and lent it to my family this past week, and we spent 4 days up in the Adirondacks, and they were hitting in the mid-20s at night. So when you woke up in the morning, everything was frosted over, and there's a lake on the property, and there'd be like a nice like fog mist on the lake, and everything was just covered. And I'm looking at these Eupatorium Immaculatum completely, the seed heads covered in frost. And there's not a lot of birds there, but the birds that were there were really taking use. So I was like, wow, this is really serving a great purpose right now. Yes, it looks great when it blooms. And yes, it looks good at other parts of the season, but it was really serving a great purpose. So, and most people are like, wow, it's already died back for the winter. Yes. But the large and abundant flat top flower heads, even though they're spent, they're feeding birds like American goldfinch, things like that. And the 4 to 6 foot tall stems, they're going to serve as overwintering for beneficial insects. So I just think right now, beauty, you kind of have to rethink beauty at this time of the year and functionality, not just looks. When it's blooming, those pink flowers are tremendous, and that's another great attribute because it attracts so many pollinators at that time of the year. But right now, for the food web, it's serving a great purpose. And it was nice just seeing them still up, not cut back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Doing a lot of good right now.
And that's a cool garden too. But,
it really is.
Just because it's all native plants to that region. And it's because there's not someone there who's maintaining it. It gets a little wild. But it's because there's a border, there's a river rock border on it.
Yeah.
It keeps it contained. It's not like spilling over the border. It looks, I don't want to say formal, but it doesn't look, I can't think of like I said, my mind is fuzzy. The words aren't coming out of me right now. But it has a maintained look, but
it's also
Still
wild.
looks wild.
Yeah, it looks wild at the same
Wild
time.
at heart. That's probably the phrase.
And there were a lot of goldenrods and a lot of other things that were serving great purpose, but it was just those Eupatorium stems so tall. And when you're on the deck, they surround a deck that goes around the house. So the blooms were like at eye height, like eye level almost. Like when you were, it was just kind of really like they were just above the rails.
Now,
so
when
that's
I
what
was
you were
there
seeing when you walked
a
by.
month earlier, there was two really cool things that I saw that I meant to post pictures of and I forgot. So I guess I can still do that now. But so the Eupatoriums, you had a lot of bumblebees. I don't know what kind of bumblebee it was, bumblebee that were sleeping underneath the flower heads. It was really cool, and that got posted on our TikTok. But no, I didn't post it because, like I said, I forgot. But on the goldenrods, I took a really unique picture to me. It's not like it's anything special, but it's the goldenrods were really covered in these bald-faced hornets.
Oh,
and they were all like foraging on the nectar, and like and when I say covered, it was like there was hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of these hornets on, and you could walk right up to them. They didn't care because they're foraging. You're not attacking their nest. They're not a threat unless you're in their space, and not when like you're in their home. If someone's going into your home, you'd probably be upset too. But when they're eating, they're out at a restaurant and you're just kind of walking by. They don't really care that much. And we found it with a lot of bees. But what was unique about this picture is I got a picture of one of these hornets, a fly, and then they're on goldenrod. I'm like, oh man, those are three like really misunderstood characters in the native plant world, because goldenrods, everyone thinks they're allergic. Well, they probably aren't. It's probably ragweed. And then hornets or people don't think of them as pollinators. People don't think of fly as pollinators. And I wanted to put up a nice little write-up about that, but time got away from me.
Yeah, you still have time.
But what was interesting, Fran, and I don't have a Grow Read a book today, but I did read a really cool book. It just doesn't relate to native plants enough to talk about it in depth, but I can talk about it a little bit here. And you're talking about how these plants serve another function. And one of the really unique takeaways I had from this book, which is called Sapiens, which was originally published in Hebrew and then it was translated to English a handful of years ago. But it's like it calls itself a brief history of mankind. And why it's called Sapiens is because there are more humans than just Homo sapiens. There's Homo erectus and all the Neanderthals. You had all these other humans, but Sapiens were their own just single band, and they're the only ones left. But what it really boils down to early on in the book is how we have a biological reality and then like an imagined reality. And your biological reality is, okay, you need food or you're going to die. You need water, you're going to die. You need some kind of shelter, some kind of clothing, or you're probably going to die. or have great pain on you because you didn't have those things. It's going to threaten your lifespan and basically your life. Then you have your imagined reality, which is things like money and corporations and banks and cars. And they brought it was a European brand of car, but you think about like Pinelands Nursery is not a real thing. It's a corporation that was created by my parents because they believed in it, and they got all these other people to believe in it as employees, and then they got all these other people to believe in it as customers. But it's not a real, like, it's not a tangible thing that you can actually go and, oh, this is Pinelands Nursery and you can go and touch it. It's a made up thing that we all just believe in.
We believe in and we do.
And there's a believed importance in it. But if it was gone, does that mean we're going to die? No. And like, if we didn't have any money, does that mean we're going to die biologically? No, it does, because it means it's harder to get food, but it's all because we believe in money. And I started thinking about that whole concept in my head and wrapped it back to native plants, saying, yeah, we have this imagined reality with our gardening where we think that, oh, this is pretty, but biologically it does nothing for us. It's all imaginary. It's all made up that this is important to our lives, where Eupatorium Immaculatum, Eupatorium Prairie, all these native plants have a biological purpose. They are biologically real and serving a purpose in the world, whether it's not just for us, it's for all kinds of things. But no, that point just stuck with me. I'm still, like, I read this book a week and a half ago. I'm still talking about it to my wife every night.
It's funny you say that, though, because part of what sparked me, besides seeing them serving that purpose, thinking how, and realizing the beauty in that, this week, I just happened to come across an article that piqued I wasn't even looking for an article,
Mhm.
but I was looking through the internet and something popped up that said why it's important to not plant only native plants.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, that's you sparked my interest. I'm gonna read it. Well, it was a blog entry, and it was someone that was into permaculture. And it's like, all right, if you plant only native plants, take all the agricultural crops that aren't native to here
Mhm.
out of here, and let's see how you do. All right, like I understand the point they're
Yeah.
taking, but then the person went into it. The rest of it, I felt was a very ignorant
Yeah.
opinion piece, and it was someone in Montana saying, "Oh, they want to ban Elaeagnus, Russian olive,
Mhm.
and look how beautiful these things are, but they're not hurting anything."
Yeah.
And I was like, you're missing the whole, and they went
Yeah.
into all these things about permaculture. And I'm like, but you're missing the most important aspect. You're missing the food web. They're not serving a purpose to your local.
Mhm.
Like, there's not very many native birds that eat those berries.
Mhm.
So you're creating less diversity. And then they're choking out other native plants
Yeah.
that you're eliminating more food source. So you're looking at this Eupatorium Immaculatum actually serving its purpose in nature.
Mhm.
And you're complaining about something that looks pretty, but is serving no purpose in this nature here.
Yeah.
I'm sure it has a purpose where it's native to, but has no purpose here. And it was
Yeah.
just like, it's just perceived in what you think is beautiful.
Mhm.
And you're being ignorant to the overall picture of it.
Yeah. And that's an interesting. I'd love to read that article because it's such a closed-minded view on food that, and I'm still stuck in this paradigm where I 90% of the food I get, probably 99% of the food I get comes from the grocery store.
Yeah.
There's very, very little that I'm going out and getting, but we had an ecosystem that could provide for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of human beings in this country for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And it was all food. Our entire food system is farm.
Yeah.
There's nothing that we can go and get at the grocery store that I don't want to say originated here, but is from here. It was all brought over from Europeans, basically. And whether they got it from Asia or even South America, North America, and brought it back and then cultivated into what they wanted. That's all. And that's what we talked about with Sam Thayer.
Yeah.
That was an awesome conversation.
It really was. And, you know, I just thought it was funny that you have a person talking about food for humans, but ignoring the fact that all these other species we share the earth with need to eat.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know, and it was just like, wow, how do you get it and not get it? I'll have to see if I can find it for you because I was so angry. I just closed it. I started typing a response and then I just closed it up.
The other really cool point from this book, I don't want to get too far into it because then it will become growing book, but was how humans cheated the food chain in a way.
Yeah.
And that was through the discovery of fire and cooking then tools was basically what it is. And they went from something that was somewhere in the middle of the food chain to the top in way too fast of a time. And so Homo sapiens never lost that fear of the wild, I guess is what I'll say. They still even today, we still feel like there's something hunting us. We never lost it. And that's what makes us have anxiety and panic attacks and all this stuff. That's it just weighs on you. And you're constantly trying to grow, get bigger, get more money, get more of everything because you didn't know, when you were with the cave people, they didn't know if they were going to okay, if I don't collect all these berries, eat them right now, I don't know how long they're going to last on my shelf in my cave. I don't know if birds are going to come and pick the bush clean. I need to just eat everything on this bush right now, as much as I can possibly eat, or there is no come back tomorrow on this. And that whole kind of I don't want to call it gluttony, just never, because we progressed so fast up the food chain, we never lost that spirit.
Yeah.
It was a amazingly fascinating book. There were some things I didn't disagree with. Those were some points I thought were really fascinating to bring up. But if you're interested in that book, it's called Sapiens by I forget the guy's name, but I got it on Libby. It was recommended by an Instagram post called Library Mindset.
Oh,
and it just kind of lists books that you should read. Here's some books you should read by the time you're 30 or 40, or if you're someone who's interested in business or you're interested in this, and just kind of gives you some books that you should look at.
So I did start an audiobook that I could do a grow read a book, but instead I've been listening to the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast.
Which I've heard is a good podcast. I've never listened to it.
You know what? Actually, it's surprising. The last episode I listened to, it's not what you think, because the first 15, 20 minutes was all about protein shakes and juicing, so it was, and yoga. So, all right, we should, so much for keeping it short.
Yeah, exactly.
We got off topic right away.
But we have this or that up next.
All right.
And we had two really good articles.
Yeah, they were about flies as pollinators.
And then mine was about the Bell Bowl Prairie in Illinois, and how this airport, I can't remember the airport now, was going to bulldoze it and get rid of it so they can expand the airport. Well, a quick update on that first. Yeah. They pushed off, at first we were saying November 1st was when they were going to do it. They pushed it to March 1st now. They listened, there was enough uproar about this that they pushed it to March 1st. The plan is still to bulldoze it unless something can happen with some of the local naturalists, and they can come and get enough evidence, get enough support to say, hey, we need to work together on this.
Yeah. So before I forget, so this is our topic where we lead into it's our current events that we turn into a competition. So and you mentioned this is this or that. You can get with this, or you can get with that. They're two great articles, both fantastic articles. And of course, like we said, it's always competition, and we put it up for vote on the Facebook group, and the winner is
again. Yeah.
I think, I think we both feel that sometimes our listeners kind of like going for that
agree,
tie.
Yeah.
So it was 7-7, not a tremendous turnout, but it did. We do have a tie. So I know last tiebreaker, we brought one of our coworkers in, Kelsey, and we because we had never done it before, we kind of said what each of our articles was, and then she picked.
Yep.
I have another coworker out in the wings, ready to come in, but we'll just say what the articles are, not whose articles they are.
All right.
And let her. So there's no bias.
Yeah. So, well, who's going to say what the articles are?
It doesn't matter.
Because that kind of sounds like bias to me, Fran.
I
don't know.
You can present both, or we can both talk.
I say, we talk about them together.
We'll talk about it together.
I'll lead off with yours, and then you can lead off mine.
Okay.
And that way it'll
we'll talk,
we don't know who's.
Okay. All right. So you can entertain for a second.
I can try.
I'm just gonna yell out the door together. Hold on one sec.
So basically I'm feeling good now. I'm carrying on. It was a good day yesterday. Got to actually go to an NJNLA meeting yesterday, which is good, and talked about some of the native plant stuff that's happening on the state level, legislature wise. So, but we got Teresa in here now. That was some pretty poor filling in.
That's all right.
I just blanked.
All right. So joining us is our coworker, Teresa.
Hello.
So we need your help. Every week, Tom and I do, we each present a current event that is like botany based or ecology, native plant based. And we put it up for a vote, and it's a tie.
Oh.
So we need you to pick who's going to win. And we're going to tell you about the two articles, but we're not going to tell you whose article is who.
Okay, sounds good.
So
so one article was titled Flies Like Yellow, Bees Like Blue, How Flower Colors Cater to the Taste of Pollinating Insects. And it basically went on to say how
important flies are as pollinators. Like we always think of bees and butterflies.
Right.
And it kind of goes into the science about how flies like certain colors, bees like certain colors. So to attract like a pawpaw may have a flower that smells like rotten meat, so it attracts flies because only flies pollinate it. So we think of them as a nuisance, but
they're very important.
They're one of the most important pollinators, I think, right behind bees or something like that. And then the other article was about a remnant prairie in Illinois at an airport, like a remnant prairie, like going back, like undisturbed prairie, which is so rare at this point in Illinois that an airport was going to.
The airport wanted to expand, and they were going to bulldoze it.
So they were going to allow them to relocate. Like they found some rare plants, and then they found like the rusty patch bee, which is bumblebee, which is really rare. So this remnant prairie, which there aren't too many that still exist, they were going to they were going to destroy it
to expand the airport.
to expand the airport. And then it brought all this other attention to it, and it ended up.
They put a pause on until November 1st, and then there was another pause put on, I guess, just before November 1st, now till March 1st. So it's still a prairie as of now.
Okay.
And it was just how important these prairies are because we've destroyed so many of them, and what their values are. And then just learning more about flies as pollinators and how plants evolve to kind of attract, and like it even went into like shapes of flowers where only flies can do it or only bees can do it, and how so
which one of those sounds more interesting to you?
Yeah.
Well, I actually want to hear more about the flies.
All right.
So I want to hear about, the things that more people, I think,
So she wants to hear more about Fran's article.
Oh, darn it.
See, you wouldn't have voted for that, had you?
No, I wouldn't have.
So no, it was both great articles, but the fly one, I think
it reaches more people.
And it was something that you don't think of. I think it was a little more out of the box, and you don't realize how important fly. You think of, I have a fly in all these flies, I need to get rid of them.
Annoyance.
Yeah.
Don't think about the number of flies there are, and then how important they are.
Yeah.
Right.
Now I'm sure there's tons of non-native flies that are just a nuisance.
Some of your fruit flies.
Yeah, like things like that. They're not really.
Exactly.
You're looking at me every time I say nuisance. Like you're like, I can
I can relate.
I can relate to that. Nuisance.
Yes, I can.
All right, awesome. So we have a winner.
Cool. Okay.
Woohoo. Thank you, Teresa.
Well, thank you for having me.
Anytime. Thank you for joining us.
Now that's 2 losses in a row for me, and I'm keeping with my theme again.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. So I squeak out the wind on this one. So, but it's been, one of these days I'm going to go back through. I'm going to total up to see where we're at. Because I have a feeling
think it's pretty close.
I have a feeling like we both go on runs, but in the end, I think we're probably even. So, which is good. That means.
So, but the real question is, do you want to go first or second?
You know what? I'm going to go first.
Okay.
So, the funny thing is I found 2 articles I really liked that came out a day apart, both on phys.org.
I had 2. I really
yeah.
liked.
And
I wondered when one of them was from phys.org. I wonder if it's the same one I had I didn't use.
Which one was it? Because I'm trying to remember what the one is that I didn't use.
I'm trying to remember too. I'm going to have to pull up my phone and see. I hope I didn't delete it.
Was it something? It was something on the line that we've been dealing with, and I can't remember what it was. But the one that I did choose is called "Montana Lake Study Reveals How Invasive Species Affect Native Food Webs." So even though and that's by the University of Montana, and it's on phys.org, and even though it's not plant related, it is related in a way that helps you relate it to native plants. So again, I've highlighted a bunch of paragraphs that I'm going to read just to kind of give like a good overview of what the article is. It's not the whole article. So if you're interested in this, the links are on the show links are on our website, nativeplantshealthyplanet.com under the show, and you can read both of the articles. So invasive species cause biodiversity loss and about 120 billion in annual damages in the U.S. alone. Despite plentiful evidence that invasive species can change food webs, how invaders disrupt food webs and native species over time has remained unclear. Now, thanks to a new collaboration study, there is a greater insight to how invasive species progressively affect native food webs. The research was conducted by the University of Montana's Flathead Lake Biological Station, the U.S. Geological Survey, and Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. This study provides new details about how invasive lake trout affect entire lake food webs, said U.S. Fish and Wildlife fish biologist Charles Wainwright, who recently completed his graduate student work at UM's Biological Station. The findings will be important for conserving native species and ecosystems in Montana and elsewhere. The study recently published in the prestigious journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences used long-term fisheries monitoring records to determine the timing and invasion by non-native fish predator lake trout in 10 northwestern Montana lakes. It also analyzed food webs from those lakes to determine how they changed and impacted native communities as the invasions progressed. The research team showed that lake trout disrupted food webs by forcing native fishes to feed on suboptimal food sources in different habitats, eventually causing the loss of the native predator, bull trout, a threatened species protected under the U.S. Endangered Species Act. Native bull trout populations have drastically declined in many lakes across western Montana due to competitive interactions with invasive lake trout. Let me see. For the first time, we show what happened not only to bull trout, but entire food web supporting them as lake trout invade and upset lake ecosystems over time. The study also showed the food web effects of the lake trout invasions were especially pronounced as lake trout abundance increased rapidly 25 to 50 years after colonization. After 50 years, lake trout were the dominant apex predator in these food webs. The study shows that given enough time, invasive lake trout can disrupt and displace a native fish species like bull trout and create divergent biological communities that are vastly different than uninvaded ecosystems. The study's results stress the importance of protecting entire landscapes from biological invasions. The use of innovative surveillance monitoring techniques like environmental DNA are also critical to increasing the likelihood of detecting invaders before they become established. For ecosystems that have already been invaded, the study's findings can inform proactive control efforts during the early stages of invasion to avoid food web disruptions that may be difficult to reverse. I need new glasses. I realize I'm having so much trouble reading. I sound like I'm drunk because I can't see the words.
I thought it was okay.
All right.
Then again, I wouldn't trust my opinion today.
So I think, we know in a lot of cases, invasive species, what they're doing, but there's, again, I haven't gone to the science aspect in a few weeks, but I feel it's nice to have the science behind it to see what's happening. And over time, what a lot of people think isn't a big deal is a big deal because it's changing the entire food web and ecosystem. It's turning it around. So as it takes over, it's lessening the biodiversity, and it's just changing the whole fishing scene. And that's the same for, we just talked about it with Russian olive. It's the same with landscape. So they have, now that we're monitoring it over time, they have the science to prove what it's doing. And we know it now. The question is, how do you change that? That's the whole, I think it's nice to have the science. And I think we already known this. And that article I was telling you about earlier, that gentleman's whole argument was the amount of money and time it takes to eradicate these things. Are you fighting a losing battle? You know what? And that's actually a good point.
I actually agree with that aspect.
I do. But if you know this now you can take a proactive stance of not making it worse. Like,
And when we had Mike Van Cleef on, it was, okay, well, now we know that these things do happen. It's finding the next thing and making sure that doesn't disrupt us too. So, but it's amazing how many fish. I actually heard a little bit about this story on another podcast I listened to, and it's amazing how many fish are like big time game fish upset or are invasive species, and that's like rainbow trout, which is like the premier trout to a lot of people. Not a native species, I don't think, anywhere in the country, at least in most of the country. But you think a lot of people think, I'm going to go to Montana and do some fly fishing. I hope I catch a rainbow trout. Well, if you want to catch a native fish, you want to catch cutthroat trout. And those are the real prize. And they're not going to get very big because they're competing with all these rainbow trout now. Same thing. I think I heard largemouth bass are actually not a native species. Well, native to the United States are not a native species in many of the lakes that they're found. And waterways they're found. But because they're such a popular game fish, not many people eat bass. They just like to catch and release and fish for them that way. And because they're so popular that way, they have a whole fishing tournament like a national fishing tournament for them, that people just bring them around and be bucket biologists and introduce new species that way. And I know that's happened with lake trout before, and it's threatening a lot of our native species too. There's issues with some of our native sturgeons in the upper Midwest, and a lot of it, when you look at our native fish, the buffalo is another fish in the Midwest that's becoming more and more rare because of invasive carp. and people are bow fishing for carp. The buffalo kind of look like a carp. Well, a lot of them get taken too, and then disposed of. They aren't even eaten in a lot of cases because people don't like them.
You know, the thing is, it's once these things are here, it's hard to get rid of them. But you're changing what's unique about here, and you're making it something that already exists somewhere else, and you're losing all that biodiversity. You're basically saying, all right, we're going to take, if these belong here, we're going to spread them all out, and we're going to get rid of all these other things. And it's not, you're losing function over time. And it's just nice that they can monitor that and know that for sure. It's not just, you're not just speculating. You know, I mean, we kind of all felt we knew, but here's hard fact, hard science. It's maybe worse than we even imagined. So I just thought it was a nice way, something that's applicable that you can look at for any invasive species, just to kind of know how important it is to not plant native species or not help the spread of native species. Yeah, they're here, but they're consistently still being planted
and introduced. And that's well, going back to fish. I know we're plant podcast talking about fish again, but a lot of these fish got into those places, like rainbow trout spread, lake trout are spread, largemouth bass spread by our federal government agencies. Now they're saying, oh, we made a mistake. And a lot of our native or invasive plants were spread that way too.
Yeah,
totally. You think of kudzu down south, oh, that was going to cure erosion.
Great.
Nope,
not at all. So that's my article. I tried to take it in a different direction this week. So
no, that was interesting and applicable, even though it wasn't directly about native plants. It's applicable to a lot of our invasive species and how they're impacting native plants, and then our insects, birds, butterflies, all that stuff as well.
It all trickles down. So
and
what?
Fish.
Yeah. What do you got this week?
So I went back to the well, and it's also about unwanted species, not necessarily invasive species, but unwanted species. And to do that, we're going back to the airport.
Wow.
And
the same airport or
a different airport.
Ooh,
this is the Dayton airport, and they are doing something really, really cool. And the title of this article is Planting Prairies at Airports Could Make Flying Safer.
Oh,
we talked about in the last episode how you'd want to keep birds away. Well, prairies keep it's certain types of birds, and prairies will keep a certain type of birds away.
Oh,
so
okay. All right.
I'll read a little bit, and then and this article was by Cara Giamo. I can't say it. Giamo.
Giamo.
Giaimo.
All right.
And I have an Italian background. How can I pronounce that? But and basically what they're talking about is by turning hundreds of acres back to prairie, Dayton International Airport is reducing its environmental impact while cutting back on maintenance costs. So those landing at Dayton International Airport next year will descend from the spacious skies into the fruited plains. Thanks to Aviation Director Terrence Slaybaugh's groundbreaking prairie grass program, they'll be greeted by songbirds, wildflowers, and shoulder-high grass instead of the typical turf. Dayton International isn't doing it for the views. In an effort to make the airport greener, less expensive to maintain, and safer from bird strikes, the airport is turning nearly 300 acres of airport land into native prairie grasses. In a 3-year trial, if a 3-year trial proves environmentally and economically effective, 800 more acres could be to follow. According to Charity Kruger, Alwood Audubon's executive director, prairies once covered 3% of Ohio. That number is shrinking fast. The disappearance of the state's prairies is detrimental to the environmental health. The grasslands are great at detoxifying soil. We know that grasslands are great for so many reasons. I'll skip a little bit. The big new swath of prairie will provide homes for meadowlarks, bobolinks, and other small songbirds that require at least 100 acres in order to nest successfully. It may also keep away other birds that threaten aircraft safety. Collisions between birds and planes known as bird strikes cause millions of dollars of aircraft damage every year, along with hundreds of thousands of bird fatalities. The most dangerous birds are the large waterfowl that travel in clumps. Everyone thinks of back in 2009, you had Sully landed the plane on the Hudson River. It was because they lost both his engines because they ran into a flock of geese. So was the interesting part is, you think prairies, it's going to attract so many birds. It's these big birds that are causing the issues. Especially when they're traveling there's 100 geese or 50 geese in a flock, or sometimes you have snow geese. There's thousands of geese in a flock. A plane's not going to miss that. No, you have a little starling, or starling's not a good example. You have a little chickadee. Yeah, bird. There's that bird is small enough, it probably wouldn't do much damage. Sad for the bird that it got hit by a plane, but it's not threatening the lives of everyone in the airplane because of that.
No, and it makes sense because you think, one of the first things I learned about ducks and geese were they don't like tall grasses because they want to see where their predators are coming from. They like you tend to see them around water where it's mowed all the way to the edge because they feel safe. It's open area. So if you have a prairie with taller grasses, that's not where they want to be.
And these things are big when they're flying in.
Yeah.
So it's not comfortable for them to land in a whole bunch of tall grass. They could land on short grass and then walk into the tall grass. But even that's tough because it's hard to get through all those, especially something with high stem count. Like you had a stand of big blue stem, little blue stem, Indian grass. It's going to be hard for geese to cut through.
Yeah.
Little birds that are kind of fluttering around the top or even nesting down in the grass a little bit, well, they can get in those places. Geese and ducks, it's a lot harder for them to do that. Yeah. But continuing on with the article, the FAA, which is the Federal Aviation Administration, requires that all commercial airports have wildlife strike mitigation plans, which I learned that when I was in college because a bunch of my friends actually worked for a company that did this.
Oh, really?
And they were traveling all around the East Coast, going to primarily smaller local airports that had a goose problem, and their job was to scare away all the geese. Or they had a beaver problem and it was flooding one of the runways. You need to get rid of this beaver and get rid of the dam. And that he was the one guy in particular, he was flying all over the place, just going from airport to airport. And then he'd come back and we'd hang out for a little bit. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to Cleveland tomorrow, or I'm going to Lexington, Kentucky. Wow. And he was just all over the place. And he's even on the news one time because one of the towns in the Finger Lakes had a big crow problem. And he was shooting off noisemakers. It's basically
just to scare them away.
A flare gun type thing, but it just makes a big bang in the air and it would scare all the birds away. And but airports, because bird strikes are a big issue, they need to have these plans in place where they're going to get rid of a lot of the larger birds, and that includes pyrotechnics, catch and release, even lethal removal of the threats to those airports. But this is a different strategy, where you're putting in a prairie, and that's because it's not the habitat for those type of birds, it's keeping them away.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what other things it might bring in that could be threats, but that's what they're doing the study for. It's a 3-year study, and if it works, they're going to expand more. And it doesn't just help songbirds or the planes or the airport. It's also good for the airport as well, because it's going to cut way down on their maintenance costs.
Yeah.
They don't have to mow. Maybe they're mowing once or twice a year instead of weekly because you had to keep that grass short or it was going to become an issue before. So, it can be prairie for forever, really, if you maintain it as prairie. If you're mowing it that once time a year, or you're using fire to keep it a prairie, you can keep it a prairie for a long, long time.
That's a great study. I mean, again, out of the box.
Yeah.
Uses of land that's typically, it's open land that's just being managed improperly to be managed. Now, I know they want a prairie. I'm sure that's harder in certain parts of the country because it's successional forests.
Exactly,
you do have to maintain it to make sure you're not getting trees.
But if you're mowing once a year, you're keeping you use prescribed burning, you'll keep the successional forest away. It's more, I guess, where it would be an issue is where you don't typically have prairie type conditions or meadow type conditions.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of JFK Airport in New York City. Probably not a good place to put a prairie, but they are doing some stuff nearby with salt marsh, and that will affect bird travel. So
awesome article.
If this is something that works, and over 3 years they say, hey, this is something we want to continue, and they expand to the next 800 acres, I'm sure other airports are going to model this, especially if they can show the financial incentive to do this. And
it's probably more upfront, less over time.
Yeah. The other thing the article really touched on is think about all the military bases that have some kind of airport there. And and I guess the Department of Defense is actually already exploring these options a little bit because they have to worry about bird strikes too. And it's a way that they can, instead of having to maintain it, probably a lot more expensive on a military base than at your normal airport.
Instead of someone mowing, you probably just need to have someone monitor.
Yep.
Exactly. And then
just make sure it's not getting out of control. And so that's another big impact that this could have as well.
Awesome. 2 great articles. So we'll make sure we get these posted within the next 24 hours if you're listening on Friday when we publish this. And if you're a member of the Facebook group, and only members of the Facebook group can vote. So make sure you go over there and vote. And there has to be a winner because. And of course, the choice is yours. So listener shout outs. Still no, I guess we should do. You want to do listener shout outs?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think we have to, right?
Yeah, we have to. I just meant next.
Listener shout out.
So no 5-star reviews on Apple, but you did get a review.
You got a written review.
Yes.
Because they listen on Spotify, and Spotify doesn't allow reviews, which I didn't know.
I didn't know that either.
Did. But I listen on Apple Podcasts primarily. There's a handful of things I'll pull up on Spotify. Usually if I'm driving, I'll just click on it real quick. But we got a nice message from Pamela, who said she really likes the podcast, but she listens on Spotify. So she actually left a comment on YouTube.
That's awesome.
It's nice to hear.
That was nice to hear. So I have, I went in a different direction. Mm-hmm. I'm going with Santino Loricella. Sella. I
don't know.
From Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve. And Santino's been a former guest, but he's also very interactive in our Facebook group and posts a lot of good articles. And he's very supportive. He has a lot of great comments on other people's articles. And I just love how active of a member he is in the Facebook group. He's been a guest, but he contacted us before he was a guest. He contacted us just to say, hey, I'm a listener.
Yeah.
And I enjoy listening. And he was a member of the group before he was on the podcast, and he continues to be a great active member. And I just wanted to say thank you. We appreciate that. And I know our talk is tonight, but by the time you're listening to this, it will be over. Yeah, it was yesterday at the Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve. But we appreciate the opportunity that Santino's giving us to speak there as well. So I have no complaints this week.
That's good. But you said we do have some phone calls, right?
Yes, we do.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
So, surprisingly, Saul has been absent for 2 months.
I've noticed that. Yeah, it's been quite a while.
Yeah, but last buzz we did get a call from the bird lady, and
was Dolores?
Dolores, yeah.
Put a little more respect on her name.
Yeah, we got a phone call from Dolores last buzz, and we got another phone call for you this week. So I'm gonna play, and it's not Dolores.
Okay.
All right.
Hello, Tom. This is Brenda Fricker. You may remember my portrayal of the Pigeon Lady of Central Park in the second installment of the Home Alone series. I was saddened to hear of your irrational fear of bird ladies on a recent episode of your podcast. It's unfortunate that ornithophiles are so terribly misunderstood in our society. As a founding member of AllPal, actors who portray avian lovers, I feel I have a civic responsibility to ensure that people like you understand that we are not to be feared. AllPals are becoming rarer every day. Many actors simply shy away from taking on roles like this because of the stigma associated with the portrayal of fans of the birds. Don't be a part of the problem, Tom. You're better than this. As it turns out, I do actually have a question for you. A bit of trivia, really, on the subject of pigeons. Do you know why the passenger pigeon became extinct? That's all I have for now. Next time you're in Dublin, look me up and we'll go have a pint down the pub. If you're lucky, maybe I'll introduce you to some of my feathered friends. Ta now. Bye.
So, do you actually have an issue with the Pigeon Lady as well?
I wouldn't say I have an issue with it, but it might come as a surprise. I steered clear of that movie because I heard about the Pigeon Lady. So I've actually never seen Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. Now that I'm a little older, maybe I can watch.
I think you should go back and revisit that one. So now look at you. You have a celebrity following of actors and actresses that play avian lover.
Yeah.
Don't be part of the problem.
I'm going to have to look up this organization, maybe make a donation. But, so I wasn't prepared for a question, but Fran, you said you listened to this before. So
I did.
You wrote some notes here.
And we've had this conversation before. You know, one of the things that actually sparked my interest in passenger pigeon decline was the nursery has a customer appreciation dinner every year. And it's kind of changed forms over the year, but Don Knezik, Tom's father, brought in, he had seen this gentleman. It's an actor who portrays famous people and gives talks. And he brought someone in to play John Audubon. And he talked about passenger pigeons. And then afterwards, we talked about the decline of passenger pigeons. And that kind of was like, you know, because he was talking about as John Audubon going through the woods and there being millions, like the sound of the passenger pigeon taking off was deafening. And now they no longer exist. I think the last one was 1914 or 1917 that was spotted. So it's actually a multitude of things that caused the decline. It was a loss of habitat because we chopped down all the forests or eliminated a lot of the forests that they were living in. Plus they were vastly hunted and killed for food, which I'm curious just what passenger pigeon tastes like.
I assume pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, if it was being hunted in like large numbers for food. Yeah. And then
I know conventional city pigeons are supposedly delicious.
Are they really?
That's what squab is.
Oh, that's true. So then I know they were being killed in large numbers because they were considered a threat to agriculture and farming crops. So we killed their habitat and then killed them because of being close to agricultural crops, and then we ate them. So it was a multitude of things. So and it's very sad that we eliminated once the most abundant bird on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And
this was just a topic in a book I read recently, but I'm drawing a blank on what they said about it too. But there's a lot of parallels, if I remember, to the near extinction of the American bison. And
because we were killing bison because of their importance to
in part because of their importance to Native Americans. That's at least it's rumored. It was also for the hides. They'd also kill them. And part of it was you had in the end of the Civil War, and you had a bunch of people who just got out of a war, knew how to shoot, knew how to fight, and didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
And there was guarantees of money out west if you were a hide hunter. And even in that case, there was like, you still had market hunters waiting on the Canadian border saying, oh, the great herd's going to come down from the north. And there was almost none left. And it was actually Teddy Roosevelt who kind of saved that population by, I think in part by bringing one of them to the Brooklyn Zoo.
Oh.
And that was, that's the model for the buffalo. And the other little fact I like about bison is that they're not botanical name. Their Latin name is bison.
You know, maybe that was my other article on phys.org. It was about reintroduction of buffalo somewhere.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a lot of that credit goes to President Teddy Roosevelt, because he was taking trips to kill a lot of these animals and then said, ooh, yeah, I like doing this, but if other people want to keep doing this, we need to make sure that there's more. And that created a lot of our public lands. That created a lot of our environmental awakening and all that. But even with the passenger pigeon, if I remember correctly, a lot of it was people just didn't know that that they were causing such an impact. They were in agricultural settings. We need to get rid of all of them because they're causing issues.
Yeah.
And but they didn't realize that it was an issue that they were causing. And that's what's going on today when we keep talking about the whole people planting invasive plants, people planting non-native plants in the yard. They just don't know that they're causing issues by doing that. The knowledge base isn't there, and it's up to us, Fran and I, and then everyone listening, to try and change this and at least change one or two people's minds so that we can kind of get ahead of this before it's too late.
So we appreciate actress Brenda Fricker coming out of retirement to let us know. She was also the mother in The Commitments. I'm trying to think of what I've never seen that one. But you know, it's nice that the pigeons have advocates.
Yeah, no, it
You know,
definitely is.
so
So
don't
I'm gonna
be-
have to
don't
watch
be
that
afraid.
now that I'm a little older. I can probably watch that movie and not be too scared.
All
But I
right.
won't expose my son. Talking about things that like I don't that I don't always get the pop culture references to. I didn't like Home Alone.
Really?
I'm and definitely in the minority of that. I just didn't like the I didn't find the violence humorous.
You know, it's funny. I just saw something on social media about Home Alone where someone's like, "Hey, kid, just call the cops. Why you such a sadist?
Yeah,
just
yeah.
call the police. You
Yeah.
didn't have to handle this yourself." But I think at the time that came out, I was already like early 20s,
Mhm.
so I was an adult at that point and could, just be like, just take it for. Plus, it's a John Hughes movie, and I'm a huge John Hughes. I don't know
who
if you
John
knew that.
Hughes is.
Oh, all right. So John Hughes either wrote or directed or both most of the 80s Brat Pack. So Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles. He also did Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Home Alone 1 and 2. He did. Am I striking any that you know or have seen?
I've seen 2 of those.
All right.
Breakfast
Also,
Club and then Home Alone 1.
Vacation and Christmas Vacation.
I think I've at least seen parts of it.
Yeah. But he was behind Weird Science, a lot of those movies. So,
Mhm.
so
Other unpopular pins. I didn't think for Vacation or Christmas Vacation were very good either.
Aw.
So
All
now
right.
it makes more sense why
Yeah.
we think Home Alone was at that point.
So we don't really have a topic this week, but I thought we would just do a little bit of follow up. Speaking of birds and the bird lady from Mary Poppins,
Mhm.
Dolores. Speaking of Dolores, I was telling Agatha about it that night after we recorded, and that we were listing plants that were good for birds over the winter, and she was like, "Oh, American holly," and I was like, "No, we didn't mention that one." So I at least wanted to follow up and throw American holly out there as something that you can plant if you want something taller. We focused more on shrubs. We didn't really talk
Yeah.
about trees that can be used. And also with the Halloween plants, we did have one listener throw a native plant that we didn't know, because I'm assuming it's not native here.
Mhm.
I don't know. I didn't look. But cursed crownfoot, which is a fantastic spooky name. And it's Ranunculus Celeratus. And that was a Nissa bird that threw that one out to us. So we appreciate you throwing that out. I don't think anyone else threw any more out there, but I thought that was a great spooky name. I know Tom's looking
This
it up
is a
right
neat
now.
looking plant. Yeah, I'm
Is it?
trying to find
Find out where it's native to.
it says it's native in New England.
All right.
So,
All right. Awesome. So it's time. We thought more for the topic it's the salt contest. So
Yes,
we managed to get 8 entries, and our goal was to pick our favorite, and then we're going to put the other 7 on our Facebook group for people to vote. I don't know that you can put 7 up. Like, do we have to do 7 individual? I guess we have to post all 8, like the one that we picked and who the winner is.
Mhm.
I guess we should say who the winner, the one that we're picking. We didn't talk about this, but I'm
no,
assuming.
I think you're just picking.
Oh, all
I'm
right.
pretty sure you're just picking.
Wow, we didn't talk about it. All right.
There's one that where the artistic skill is clearly better than the rest.
Yes,
which is very good.
but it's yes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But that being said, that wouldn't have been my choice.
Really?
Yeah.
See, to me that represents who Saul is in my mind.
Yeah, mine.
Not
is,
just the artistic thing. It's what I like. Literally, if I were to go to a police sketch artist and say,
That's interesting.
need
because
you
you
to
didn't
find
pick
this-
the police sketch of Saul.
No,
for
no.
the-
So wow, so this is interesting. So you and I
Yeah.
don't. I just
we
assumed
can-
we agreed.
we
but
can put. How about we both give ours and then we'll give a
Saul
third
3.
option. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Because
So-
mine was. I thought about how Saul. There's one that just stuck out to me, and it was how
Okay.
Saul saw himself,
Ooh.
and it was very abstract, and I really liked that one a lot. And it was one of the ones that one of the kids did.
Okay. All right. So and unfortunately, I was given ages, but not names.
Yeah.
So, but is that the one that was
was-
the 7-year?
It was 7-year-old one.
7. All right. All right. So I am picking an entry from Alyssa Lewis,
Mhm.
And yeah, the artistic ability is through the roof, but visually, like I said, it's it's not so much artistic ability. It's what I pictured in my head Saul to look like.
Yeah. The other thing that was really unique is Santino Lauricella's picture.
Yeah.
Looks surprisingly like not like Saul, but another friend of ours. who so who I was like, oh crap, he like almost drew the police sketch of our
friend. Yeah. It's actually like, yeah. When I saw that, it was kind of scary.
Yeah,
like,
when I've seen,
I know Santino was going with Dustin Hoffman.
Okay.
You know, but that picture looks like a friend of ours, dead on.
Yeah. And like our friend's hair is a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I always thought he looked a lot like Gene Wilder.
Ooh, you know what? Very good comparison. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
Not a dead ringer for Gene Wilder, but you could see maybe they were siblings.
Yeah. So I'm picking Alyssa Joy Lewis. You were picking her. I don't even know if it's male or female, but it's
7-year-old one.
The 7-year-old Lewis. So we're going to submit those two to Saul. So we will hear from Saul on the next the next buzz. And then there's 6 more entries. Deborah Rosenthal, Dr. Evil.
She really looked into Saul's criminal past and did a mugshot.
Rocky Donovan.
Which was one we got yesterday. That was another really good one.
And
it
then
looked a lot like Larry David.
I feel like I'm forgetting. Oh, we said Santino.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's 2 other Lewis kids, the 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, I believe.
I don't remember.
I don't know. We should probably know more. But they were the ones that the 3 Lewis kids are the ones who did grow readable.
Dr. Evil had the super the super
Superman.
Saul.
Yeah, Super Saul.
That was a good one.
And Deborah Rosenthal had Mugshot Saul.
No, we got some really good ones. We're glad people submitted some drawings and
all right. So wow, I just assumed, it's funny we didn't talk about it. I just assumed we were on the same page. So I'm kind of glad that I paused before.
Oh yeah, me too.
Sorry for assuming.
Yeah, because I was like, I guess we're talking about this live because we haven't talked.
We have to. We said we were going to do it. So we're going to submit our 2 favorites, and then
and we'll put them all up on the Facebook for all our fans. You're going to do the fan vote, and
between the other 6,
and we'll put our selections up there too, but you can't vote for them.
When you do a vote, how many things can you vote on? You can't do 6. Can you do that many? Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that would be good.
Yeah. And then I think you can put pictures, but I'm not positive.
All right. Or we may have to. All right. If not, we'll figure it out. So we'll get that up there. But so we're the next buzz.
We'll have
all right. We have to give everyone 1 week to vote. Just 1 week.
Yes.
Because Saul needs a week to pick the winner between the 3. All right. Yeah.
I can put an end date on the poll. So I'll put a poll to end next Friday, which is the 19th. And
I think so. Yes, the 19th.
And then we'll end the 19th, and then Saul, that choice is going to Saul along with ours, and we'll do our vote then. Yeah. So Saul will call in, and I'm curious. I hope Saul's okay. I haven't heard anything from him at all. With his medical history, I'm also worried about and clumsiness. Yeah. So before we do pod deck, and I'm hoping there's a pod deck in here that we can even do. And surprisingly, we are over an hour. Yeah. For keeping it short and not really having a topic, we're over an hour. So Tom and I came up with an idea, and we wanted to announce after the first of the year, we're going to launch a second podcast. And it kind of stems that we feel that we've gotten away from talking about native plants. Every other buzz we do, that's hot. But we always kind of envisioned that Native Plants Healthy Planet would be one of many podcasts presented by Pinelands Nursery. Yeah. So we're in the pre-production stage, so we can get a bunch done ahead of time and a lot of the research done for it. But it's going to be called A Native Plant Every Day with Tom and Fran. And it will be a very short form, 10 to 15 minutes, and we're going to try not to get away from that. Yeah. But it will be a daily podcast, Monday through Friday, where you can, every day we'll just focus on one
native plant.
Mhm.
And we're going to talk a lot, get a little bit more in depth about that plant and its uses and just what we love about it.
Yep.
And it will be things native to the Northeast, and it's going to be things native to other parts of the country as well. So we'll expand it. To do one every day, we're going to have to come up with a lot of
we
native
need
plants.
to find a lot of plants especially if we want this to last longer than a year.
Yeah. So, and our plan is to have special guests in the studio with us for a week's worth of episodes, where they're talking about the plants with us. So we're excited about this one. It's like I said, it's going to be short form. It's not going to have its own website. We'll post it on our social media occasionally, but it's not going to be, where we're shoving it down your throat every day. So we hope you listen, and we're excited. And we may have other guests from the nursery. It may not always be me and Tom. It may be Tom and someone else, or me and someone else, or we can get a little bit more creative with it. And I think we're excited about that, and it will bring us back to the focus.
Exactly.
So, all right. I guess I should have been looking probably through the pod deck while I was talking about that, but of course I wasn't. All right, let me see what we got here. Discuss a trending topic.
We kind of did with the Bell Bowl Prairie a little bit. That's been trending all through a lot of the native plant circles.
I have a very interesting topic that we can discuss, and to keep it industry related. So I want to talk about just organizations within not just the nursery industry and native plants. I was thinking about it with the Native Plant Society of New Jersey, and because you had a meeting yesterday for the New Jersey Nursery Landscape Association, and they're looking for members, and it's becoming increasingly harder and harder to find members.
Yeah.
And the people that are not members, people that take a bigger step in those organizations, like board members.
Yeah.
And these organizations are very important. And it's the people that are board members in multiple organizations. Just how important it is for people to take a larger step, I think, in these organizations, because I know you were saying, like, you need board members in certain parts of the states for the New Jersey Nursery and Landscape Association. And even, Hubert Ling at the Native Plant Society is a horticulturalist, because I'm sure he wants to be, in part, there's no one willing to step up to take that responsibility from him. And it's just, there's a lack of people willing to get more involved. And, I'm guilty of that. Earlier in my career, I was more involved in a lot more organizations, and I kind of feel like I did that. And then I raised my family. Now I'm at a point where I can be more involved again. But, if this is something that you're passionate about, even like, I know the Southeastern Grasslands Initiative, like they're growing. They need more people to be involved. Think about taking an active role. I know it's a little more time out of your daily routine, but these organizations don't just need your money. They need your involvement to continue to grow and do the work that they do. So just, I thought that would be a good, it's a trending topic, because we talk about all these organizations every day and all the great work that they're doing, and to be a part of it and to give your money, but they really need your help.
Exactly.
And your time. Time is really important. And I know time is limited, but
it seems like everyone is busier than ever, just because it's not just your local things that you can go to anymore. You can go to meetings all over the country if you want to, just because a lot of stuff's held online, which is a great thing, because you can be more in tune on these things you're passionate about, but it's also it sucks up a lot of your time. And it seems like kids' schedules are more and more busy. There's more and more things going on. Like I know, just from the athletics point of view, if you're a middle school, high school age kid, you're not just playing for your high school team, you're playing for a travel team, you're playing for a winter league team, you're playing out of seasons, and then you have training stuff and all this stuff going on. is basically these sports have dominated with the guarantee that you're going to get you into a college you want to go to. And they're just dominating time. And you talk to the actual college coaches, at least my background's in lacrosse, you talk to them, they want to see athletes from multiple sports. They want to see if you're a lacrosse player in the spring, they want to see you played football in the fall and basketball in the winter or whatever. It's just something else. They want well-rounded individuals in a lot of cases, not someone who's just burned out of lacrosse.
And we're speaking about this from experience because Tom, you played college lacrosse. Your brother played college lacrosse. My oldest
a travel team for a long time.
And you coach college lacrosse.
Yes, coach college lacrosse.
My oldest son plays college lacrosse. Now his experience, we had a coach specifically say that at a at like a not a pro day, but what do you call it? Like a it was like
I know what you're talking about. They have like little invite showcases.
Yeah. And he was saying we want kids to play two sports because we want to know that kid doesn't get burnt out by the time. Now, my son was playing lacrosse. He was playing he was on two indoor teams in the winter. He was, I guess, travel stops when you hit high school now, but you're playing summer tournament lacrosse, plus going to all the special showcases they have. Plus he wrestled.
Yeah.
And he played soccer. You know, that's a lot of stuff and that was just one of my two kids. And of course, my other son was doing all different activities. He was doing marching band and ROTC. That's a lot. That's a lot. So I understand that everyone's spread thin, but these organizations can't just do it with your money.
Yeah. And I'll bring up the NJNLA just because we had a meeting yesterday. And there was someone who brought up an experience where they were asked, well, what's the NJNLA do for me? And well, you just really have to look back at the COVID pandemic and nurseries. And we're a source of agriculture, so we were allowed to stay open. But there was a lot of discussion, at least on the state level in New Jersey, saying, well, do people really need to go to garden centers to buy plants? Or, they need to go to a grocery store. A farm market's a great place for them to get food that's local. They aren't going to a big place. They're going to a smaller place and supporting a local business. We're going to leave them open. We can't close down our farms because a lot of times they're working on their own in big equipment in open fields and they're supplying food for the world. You really need to go to a garden center and pick up plants. And you had Lori Jensen from NJNLA. You have some members on the state board of ag that vouched for the nursery initiative. Hey, we need to be open too. This is not just a food thing. It's about mental health, and plants are shown to improve mental health. And nurseries, and I don't know if that was what swayed them. Maybe nurseries and greenhouses and all that got to stay open anyway. But if you don't have that voice, you don't know what'll happen. And there's no one vouching for it. And we saw in other states, nurseries and garden centers had to shut down.
Yeah.
And they saw some of they couldn't make money. In the meantime, you saw nurseries and garden centers on the East Coast have the best years they've ever had because people were getting more involved with nature.
They had a revival, and we were considered essential workers, and we were able to go into work every day. And garden centers in our area had some of their best years in 20, 30 years. Independent garden centers. So, which was nice to see because the independent garden centers had been in decline over the last 20 years because of big box stores. But
if you don't have that voice in our case, Trenton, or in your local state capital or municipal area or on a federal level, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You need to have that voice. And whether it's for native plants or whatever you're interested in, take the time and see if you can get more involved, even if it's just for like the events committee. You don't have to be a board member, but
you don't have to
go
get
involved
crazy
with like an events committee, or say you want to be on a task force for a specific event. They have a fall art show and you want to make sure you're involved with that because you can give up a couple nights for a month or two.
Well, and what's nice is when you do that, you get input.
Exactly.
You get to have some input.
Yeah, you get to say what and choose a direction for what that's going to be.
But if you look a lot at these organizations, the people that are running these things have been running it for a very long time, and they're doing it because they know that there's not someone in the wings to take their place.
Yep.
So get involved, get a little bit more involved to help out, because some of these great organizations that we talk about may not exist without your help.
And if you join it and you don't like it, you can leave, or you can try and change it into what you want to enjoy.
Exactly.
So there's options for you, but you don't get those choices unless you get involved. So that was a good topic, Fran. I like that.
Thank you.
So that is it. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you everyone for listening to Native Plants Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
Thank you, RJ Comer, for our Buzz theme music, which is titled Nightly Suicide. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you consume your music. Follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram, 2 places at Pinelands Nursery or Native Plants _Healthy Planet, and YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Wow, we've gotten a ton of subscribers on YouTube. Recently. A lot of great content, not just the podcast up there. There's a lot of great native plant content up there. We have the question and comment line, and more than just avian lovers can call that. It's 215-346-6189. I will repeat that, 215-346-6189. Call us up, ask a question, leave a comment. When we play it on a upcoming episode of The Buzz, we'll answer it to the best of our knowledge, or we'll phone a friend and get an expert to actually answer it. And don't forget about the Facebook group. It just keeps growing and growing, and it's a lot of great content. And I guess Facebook groups changed.
Yeah, it changed a little bit.
Yeah, it changed a little bit. So technically, anyone can join without our approval at this point, and people can comment even if they're not a member. So if you don't want to be a member and you just want to follow along and comment every now and then, you can do that. So make sure you look for the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. Keep the conversation going over there.
You can now buy t-shirts. We have them on our website, www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com.
Tons of t-shirts.
Tons of t-shirts. So it's the holiday season. So go head on over there and get a t-shirt for a loved one or friend.
The turnaround time isn't always quick. So if you're ordering for the holidays, make sure you get your orders in now.
Yeah. And that's just, if you go to our website, it's just a banner at the top that says support native plants. Click here for t-shirts. And click that, it'll take you to our Teespring store. And always remember, 100% of the proceeds from that are going to organizations that we want to support through the podcast. They're doing great boots on the ground work with native plants. So make sure you, when you listen to this podcast, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, not Spotify, I think you can review us on Stitcher.
I think you can review on Stitcher, yes.
And then you can always leave a like on YouTube if you listen there. But if you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're subscribed. And if you can leave a 5-star review, I'll give you a shout out, but it also goes a long way into boosting up in the rankings, and they'll get more people listening, and then you'll have more friends to talk about our podcast.
Exactly.
So, and then as always, you can even ask Alexa to play the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast. With that, thank you, everyone. I'm Tom.
I'm Fran. No secrets today.
You were up.
I don't have, one thing I thought of actually that not a lot of people know. And I think we've kind of mentioned this we may have mentioned this on an earlier podcast. Like, even though there's none visible, I have tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
So, and thinking about like our avian lovers that keep calling in, even my recent love for bird watching, Agatha and I over COVID, like starting to enjoy that. I actually have a few swallow tattoos, and it wasn't, it's funny that I've had them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wow, they kind of take on a little bit different meaning for me now that I have them. So it's nothing.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Nothing that they're not visible. So you would never, a lot of people don't know that about me, that I have a bunch of tattoos. It's not like I'm covered, but I have a bunch of tattoos. So it's just like, that's not something anyone would ever see. So I thought I'd share that.
Oh, that's a good one.
So that's it. So, you already said
I already said goodbye.
I got to change the strategy. Tom checked out. All right. Thank you, everyone. I am Fran. We'll see you next time. We don't have, it will be a meet the guest, but we don't know who yet. We haven't firmed it up yet, but we'll have that. Obviously, we'll have that taken care of before the next episode. But we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.